Oh, that's nice. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I hope you had a great networking break and are enjoying the show so far. I'm very pleased to host some thoughtful and inspiring presentations on a topic that is key to our success in the energy transition and net zero. So some say that energy transition net zero, will go through a farm or a mine, and we're going to focus on the mine today. So we talk about critical minerals. Certainly, this is an ever-growing requirement and a big topic for us these days. One that I feel really exemplifies the hard trade-offs that we must make in energy transition and in a net zero future. So today we explore two people and two companies that are focused on critical minerals and some exciting stuff that we'll learn today. So first we have Oliver Gunasekara. He's going to talk to us about mining for the climate crisis without destroying the planet. To achieve net zero emissions, there is a need to increase mining by 500%, reducing demand, substitutions, and recycling, as well as comparing land, sea, and space mining sources, will be considered as solutions to get the metals we need for net zero. New technology will show us how to preserve and protect the marine environment while still delivering the metals we need for the energy transition. Oliver is a serial entrepreneur who has founded and led 3 tech companies, leading them through acquisition, IPOs, and significant funding rounds. He played a key role in growing ARM's mobile market share from 0 to 95%, co-founded NG Kodak, and he founded Impossible Metals in 2020 to focus on refining battery metals from the seabed sustainably, using underwater robotics to gather materials without harming the environment. Oliver has degrees in electrical engineering, electronic engineering from the University of Greenwich, and a mini MBA from Stanford University. So please, everyone, let's welcome Oliver to the stage.
Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Oliver, I'm the CEO of Impossible Metals, and yeah, I'm going to talk about what I think is an inconvenient dilemma. We all need to decarbonize. We need the energy transition, but that transition is based on minerals. And where do we get them and how do we get them really matters. But I wanted to start with a personal story. Why am I here? And this picture really summarizes why I'm here. This was September 2020 in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's become known as Orange Sky Day. It's the day that the wildfires got completely out of control. Now, I've lived in this area for now 19 years, but I've never seen a day like this, when the sky went completely orange. And for me personally, it was a wake-up call. We've got to do something about this climate. And maybe there's a third startup in me. I'm fortunate that I've done a few before. They were all in the semiconductor space. But this was the catalyst for me to say, we need to do something. And I think it has been for many, many folks. But let's come back to mining. There's a really good saying, if it's not grown, it's mined. You look around. Everything you see and use, if it wasn't grown, it was mined. Civilization does not exist without mining. It's fundamental. And if we want to stop mining, then we're basically stopping civilization. Now, some will say recycling, and recycling is great, circularity. We want to encourage circularity. But the reality is the demand curve is so steep that circularity doesn't move the needle for at least the next 20 years. For instance, nickel, a key ingredient in batteries, the IEA says just 3% of nickel will come from recycled or secondary supply in 2030. I think 10% in 2040. The remainder has to be dug out of the ground somehow. And how we dig out of the ground really matters. And one of the challenges that we're facing isn't just the climate crisis, but it's what people refer to as the triple planetary crisis. It's climate, of course, but it's also pollution and biodiversity loss. All 3 are happening on our watch, and they're having massive issues. Here is a picture of a mine in Indonesia. Now, it used to be a rainforest. There has been massive deforestation. And as of today, the vast majority of the nickel that we consume comes from Indonesia, over 60%. And all of it was in a rainforest. And so you have to remove that rainforest. Huge problems, not only for the biodiversity in the rainforest, but also for the indigenous people that live there. And often they are given no choice, but are forced off their land. Let's talk about cobalt. Cobalt, another very important ingredient for the energy transition. It's a really good material that we use in high-performance lithium-ion batteries. But unfortunately, a large percentage, maybe a third or so, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC, is mined by hand. This is so-called artisanal miners. And many of them are teenagers. And there are injuries and deaths. They have to dig holes. It's unfortunately the reality, and it's not great, and we need to do better. So how can we deliver all of this metal? Recycling is important, but it doesn't move the needle. We need huge quantities of more material out of the ground. What about if we went to the seabed? And this is a little bit controversial, because the seabed is an area that is pristine. We haven't mined it yet. And it's very deep. But on the deep seabed are these round potato-sized rocks. They're called polymetallic nodules. They're they lie on the ocean floor, so we don't have to dig or drill or tunnel. We just have to pick them up. And because they're so deep, up to 6 kilometers deep, we find that the amount of life down there is relatively small. There is very important biodiversity, but the majority of it is in the bacteria. There are corals, there are sponges, there's a species of octopus that lays its eggs, but it's a bit like a desert. Compared to a rainforest, it's a lot less life. But we should still preserve it. And for me, I discovered that there was now increased interest in picking up these nodules because they are the planet's biggest source of battery metals. They contain nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese in very, very high grades with huge abundance. In fact, there's estimated to be something like $100 trillion worth of these metals, enough to electrify every form of transport in the planet. And I mean every, not just cars, but trucks and ships, and in the future, when the chemistries allow, planes as well. This is the future. We will get there. We will electrify everything. But we need massive quantities of these metals. So the question is, how to pick these up in a way that doesn't destroy the environment down there? Because although it's not a huge amount of life, it is pretty special and unique. And there could be things like pharmaceutical benefits from the bacteria that live on the ocean floor. And so historically, there has been technology that was invented in the 1960s and actually tested in the 1970s. And this is dredging with riser pump systems. And you can see here an animation, if I show you on, I guess, on the right of the display. The dredging technology, unfortunately, is a big collector that gets lowered to the seabed floor. And it literally vacuums up everything that's down there, including the top 5 to 10 centimeters of the sediment, any of the nodules, of course, any of the life, the corals, the sponges. And then it takes it up this long riser tube to a support ship where the water is separated and then returned. Now, this technology was the best that we could do in the 60s and 70s, but we've come a long way since then. We can do a lot better with advanced robotics, with AI, with computer vision. And so on the other side, you can see this autonomous robot, this yellow robot that's just hovering. It doesn't land. It literally uses computer vision and AI to pick up these nodules one by one. And if we can detect life, now we can't see the bacteria, but we can see basically everything that's about 1 millimeter or larger, a coral, a sponge, or other forms of life, then we don't disturb it. And in fact, we can program how much we pick up, and we are looking at probably leaving around 30% behind. That would comply with some of the international treaties on biodiversity. So this is the first time ever that we can actually use technology to harvest critical minerals from our planet and yet still preserve and protect the habitat, such that the octopus that comes and lays its eggs, there will still be some of the nodules there. The corals that exist, the bacteria that's in the sediment that could have amazing pharmaceutical properties isn't destroyed. So this is a unique capability that we've been working on now for the last 4 years. And another key benefit, because I'm a big believer that it's not sufficient to just be greener. We have to be less expensive as well, because few people will pay a green premium. But by using advanced robotics, advanced technology, and a blank sheet of paper, by looking at this problem and breaking it down into its unique components, the actual pickup from the seabed, which is the collector vehicle, the moving up and down the water column, so instead of using a pumped riser tube, we actually put the nodules inside the vehicle and it moves up and down the water column. And then how do we get them to shore? So in the dredging system, they have a dedicated ship that all it does is basically collect a small quantity, and then every few days they have to do a ship-to-ship transfer. That's difficult and expensive and complex. In our architecture, because of a blank sheet of paper, we said, what if we put unique cranes onto a bulk transport carrier? What if there was a ship that used to transfer coal, but now we're moving away from coal? What if we could reuse that ship to transfer the nodules? And so that's exactly what we do. And we put a unique launch and recovery system, a unique crane onto this system. By doing all of that, our belief is that we can be 30 to 50% less expensive than the alternative, which is the dredging system. And compared to land-based mining, I think we can also be another 30 to 50% less expensive. Because on land, the only mining that's left is the stuff that we haven't yet mined. And by its nature, it's not good. It's less good. It's lower grade. It's more remote. And so that means that we have to process huge quantities. The grade of the ore really matters. If you have a grade of nickel of 0.2, 0.3%, you have to process huge quantities of material. That hurts you from an environment, it hurts you on economics. But we have a nickel equivalent grade of 3.2%. So a massive increase in grade. We have 4 metals in one, and we also don't need to build new infrastructure. Another big challenge with new mines is that by definition, they're not local. All the local mines have already been created. So we're looking at places that are in the middle of Africa or very far north here in Canada. And that means no infrastructure. It means we have to build the roads, the train line, the power plant, the village for the workers. But in the ocean, we just reuse ships and ports. That, again, drastically lowers our cost. And it averages something like 20 plus years from finding a mineral deposit on land to getting it permitted, to get the infrastructure built, to get to the point where it can actually produce. We don't have that much time. The seabed industry has been working on this for over 50 years. We have over 40 pilots and prototype systems operational. There is a lot of exploration work already happening. We're getting quite close. So to finalize, I want to kind of show you a picture of what we've actually built. So you saw the animation. This is the real robot. We call it Eureka 2. As you can see, here's me and with my co-founder, Jason. And it's about the size of a small car. This robot can go up to 6 kilometers or 4 miles underwater. It's fully autonomous. It has no tether. It operates with a built-in lithium-ion battery that we recharge and swap every mission. And in this system, it actually has 3 arms. You can see them at the bottom. And it has an array of cameras, and it basically hovers about 2 meters above the seabed floor, and it picks the nodules one by one as long as there is no life. And we have proven this off the east coast of Florida. We've had this operating at depth, fully autonomously. And so our next step is really to build a larger version that we can ultimately go into production. So I will wrap up there and say thank you very much for your time, and I think we'll take questions after the next speech. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Thank you once again, Oliver. So he did me a favor there, so we will have Q&A after the next speaker. I'm excited about that, so think about your questions as we go through our presentation. So our next speaker is Amanda Hall. You may have seen her on the main stage earlier today. She's going to talk about why she loves the Valley of Death. In the world of startups and innovation, the Valley of Death is an inevitable phase where many ventures falter and fail. This perilous period between initial funding and achieving market success tests the resilience, adaptability, and tenacity of entrepreneurs and their teams. But what if, instead of dreading this valley, we learn to embrace and even love it? In this session, she will provide a unique understanding of the essence of thriving through adversity. Amanda Hall, the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Summit Nanotech, has a vision to revolutionize lithium production, a critical component in the global energy movement. As a professional geophysicist with over 2 decades of experience, she has dedicated her career to driving advancements in the energy sector. She earned her first Bachelor of Science from University of Toronto, majoring in biology and minoring in physics, and received her second Bachelor of Science in geophysics from University of Calgary. She was the 2023 EY Entrepreneur of the Year Prairies winner and recognized on Business Insider's Climate Action 30 list in 2023. She was also recognized as Canada's leading female innovator in the Mars Women in Clean Tech Challenge, which played a pivotal role in launching Summit's Nanotech as a company. So please welcome Amanda to the stage. Very impressive. Yep.
Good afternoon. I love the Valley of Death. I know you probably think I'm crazy, but bear with me while I tell you a story. Imagine that you're at the bottom of a dry, hot canyon. The rock walls are towering up beside you. The air pressing down on you from above is unbearable, and the sweat is dripping down the inside of your shirt. With you in this valley are over 100 people. You are their leader, and none of them is more tired than you are. Your legs are exhausted. Your breathing is tight. There's a constant knot in your stomach, and you're just tired. And there's this little voice inside your head that's constantly whispering, it's okay to give up. This family that you've created, this over 100 people following you, they feel like family because you care so deeply about their needs, their well-being, and their growth. And yet here they are in this valley with you, and they're looking at you saying, where do we go? What do we do next? As their leader, you look up. What do they see in you? What do they see in you in this moment? You look up, and what they see on your face is a smirk that transforms into a smile because you have a map to get through this valley. And on this map are all the things you need to survive. And along with this map, you have an energy source that you can unleash at a moment's notice. And what fuels that energy is a fire inside your belly from the cause. It's also fueled by your confidence, your grit, and your absolute refusal to die. Rudyard Kipling says that success and failure are both imposters. But I say the refusal to fail is a very empowering thing. Because when you refuse to fail, It means that you can endure all sorts of suffering and pain. And enduring suffering and pain is something that every leader is good at. What does that do for you? It allows you to adapt so that every new environment that comes your way, you know what to do, and you know from the valley of death how hard it can be. And so everything that you have to endure in the future seems bearable. I'm a geophysicist from the oil and gas sector. I started a lithium company. We invented a technology called Denali, DLE, direct lithium extraction. We pull lithium out of salt water. Not as cool as the ocean floor, but nonetheless, it does very little disruption of the surface of the earth. So this is the Maricunga salt flat that you can see behind me, and this is where we mine lithium by drilling wells and pulling salt water from underground. It looks a bit like the Valley of Death, but it's not. Under the surface is an abundance of riches. My company is over 6 years old, and for the first 4 years, I sometimes felt like a celebrity. I'd walk into a room and I could hear sometimes whispers, "It's Amanda Hall." And reporters would come to me and ask me interview questions, but that hasn't happened in a long time. Now I walk into a conference and venture capitalists turn and walk the other way. And the private equity folks, they don't even know who I am. They say, "Amanda who?" The Valley of Death is that place that a startup has to go through where you're too big for venture capital, but you're too small for private equity. And that means that no investor will touch you. And when you're in this position, it often means that even the government will look at you and say, "We're rooting for you, but good luck." You end up feeling quite alone, kind of like how I look in this picture. But you're not alone. Cue that canyon and your 100 people following you. You're down on your knees looking up at your team. They see the smile on your face and you show them your map. What's on your map? Well, first of all, you've obsessed about all the ways that you can fail. That's on your map. You've listened to your customers and that you know exactly what they need from you. That's on your map. You've also lined up an abundance of strategic partners. You've vetted their viability and selected the ones that are more accretive to your mission. That's on your map. You then take a step back and you look at the current investors on your cap table. And if you've chosen the right investors, they give you the nod because they trust you, and they've trained you to prepare for this moment because they know that the best thing that they can do to support you through the Valley of Death is to give you a little bit of seed capital, a lot of motivation, and then get out of your way. The Valley of Death amplifies your investors' motivations, their values, and their character. The Valley of Death is not where you want to be with bad investors. Some people call them the rip-your-face-off investors, the ones that take advantage of you when you're in a weak position for their own personal gain. So let that be a warning to you if you're an entrepreneur. If you haven't built strong relationships and good communication with your customers, your strategic partners, and your investors, when you get to the Valley of Death, you'll be in trouble. So cue the canyon again. You're back in the canyon with your team. You show them your map and you're smiling. Now this is the hard part because watch what will happen. Some members of your team will pack up and leave right away, and that's okay. Everyone has to take care of their family. Other members of the team will lay low and quietly start job hunting on the side. But there are some people in this 100 that will step up and they'll carry more of the load. And they will say things to you like, "Cut my salary and we'll help you get to the other side." These individuals love the challenge. They love the pressure. It's fascinating. And they're willing to endure the pain and suffering alongside you. What does suffering look like? Well, it looks like project cuts, pay cuts, losses of licenses and subscriptions to things that make your life more easy, travel bans, no more meal and entertainment budgets, they're slashed to zero, Christmas parties become potluck again. This is what it takes to get through the valley of death. But what the valley of death does bring to you is clarity. And this beautiful map appears, this beautiful line appears on your map that represents the critical path. Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. And I say, when you're going through the valley of death, get lean and go as fast as you can. The critical path for Summit Nanotech, because we're in the valley of death right now, the critical path looks something like this. We need to prove the technology at commercial scale in the field. We need commercial contracts with our customers. We need permits to operate. We need to file more patents to deepen the differentiation moat around us. And we need to build stronger relationships, business relationships with our partners. One of the most important things you need to do, though, is take the money that you do have and spend time and resources to embrace your team more tightly and communicate better. Communicating with your team is one of the most important things that you can do to get through this stage. There's this amazing movie out there, a very existential movie called Over the Hedge. It's a cartoon. Your kids might have watched it. But there's a famous line in this movie where one of the characters says, "Once you name what you're afraid of, it's not scary anymore." And so I truly believe that when you're talking to your team about the things that scare you, it takes away their fear, and it allows them to align with the mission. So I think it's obvious, but worth mentioning, that in the valley of death, this is where the competition starts to thin out. So I think as humans, it's important for us to feel that when we do sacrifice, that it sets us apart from our competitors. I have a story. My parents went to parent-teacher interviews one night when I was in high school, and they came home from parent-teacher interviews, and my dad sat me down and said, "I want to talk to you about something that your physics teacher said to me." And I sat down, and I was nervous to get into trouble for something. And then he said, "Your teacher told me that you wrote at the bottom of the exam that you were disappointed and it was too easy." And he said, "Did you really write that?" And I said, "Yes." And then he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "I get it." And that was it. As humans, we long for challenges to set us apart. This is very important for us. So this is a picture of me with 3 of my key employees. We're looking out into the Atacama Desert where we mine for lithium. When you're in this canyon, when you're in the valley of death, and you're with your team, your smile, your attitude, and your passion is contagious. And what I know from these 3, because they're no longer with my company, they've gone off to do bigger and better things, is that what you teach them in the valley of death is a very important part of their journey as well. And what these 3 individuals learned is that they too have a fire in their belly, and they too can lean on their own confidence and grit and that undeniable need to succeed and refusal to die. And when they're leading their own teams through the valley of death, they will also tell their teams that it's okay to love the valley of death. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, yeah, let's give one more round of applause to Amanda and Oliver. Thank you so much for your presentations. Very insightful. Yeah, we will have a mic rotating around, so if you have a question, please prepare it. I think we have about 10 minutes or so before this session is over, so please, if there's any questions, maybe I'll scan the room first that we can ask these presenters, whether about their business or about their presentations. I think we have one at the back over there. Very efficient, so we'll come. It's coming. And maybe as the mic gets there, okay, it's coming here. So it's right over at the end, back on the right.
It's on. Hi, Benjamin Kemp with Ambient. Enjoyed the presentation. The question I have is, we use this term valley of death, and it's kind of well known that it's a point of inflection in a company. I just want to understand on a metric level, on a feel level, because we deal with feelings and facts all the time, when is the valley of death actually over?
You have more experience with this than I do, because I'm in my first valley of death. So do you want to take that one?
So questions like, when does it go away? I mean,
Yeah.
I think when you kind of get to break even, when you're no longer dependent on external sources for capital. If you get to the point where you're generating enough revenue from your product or services to not needing additional, then I think you've passed over. And obviously you have very good product market fit because you've got the revenue to be able to prove that.
I concur.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have another question? Okay, we have one right here. It's making my job easy, although could have snuck one in.
Amanda, it was great sharing the stage with you a few hours ago, but I'm impressed with your presentation. Oliver, well done on deep sea mining. The question for both of you is looking forward into the future of the environmental impact of each of your technologies, because it's really important to many of the people that are in these conferences to hear just how friendly your technology is to the environment and what the long-term benefits it is versus what's the counter side of it having environmental impact on the environment itself, because the need for creating batteries, and by the way, I retired as a CTO of CATL. If there's any battery company in the world that makes a lot of stuff, they make a lot of stuff, and it's really important to me because part of the mission that Robin Zung and I had was to make the world a better place for everybody to live, and I'd like to hear what your environmental impact would be long term.
Excellent question. Yeah, absolutely. The reason I started this company is because I looked at the environmental impact of traditional lithium mining and said, this is ridiculous, we need to fix this. And so when I was inventing the technology with my team, we went through a series of processes where we set benchmarks and tested along the way. I'm a huge advocate, though, of not paying a green premium for anything. And so to me, it was if your product can't stand on its own 2 feet and sell based on quality and price, then you shouldn't be in business. And so we aligned as quickly as we could by benchmarking against China and looking at what Chinese batteries manufacturers needed in terms of quality, and then benchmarking our own product against what was available in the world and making sure that ours was better. And so you stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think that being green can also equal being cheaper in some ways, or more efficient, more effective. And so the two can coexist.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, we see our competition as land-based mining and deep-sea dredging. And in both cases, I completely agree, we need to be cheaper and better. Because as a startup, it's always hard to break into a market. And so just being greener, I don't think is sufficient. You've got to be greener and cheaper. And fortunately, innovation is what makes that possible.
We have one question there.
Yeah, just to the both of you, I just want to understand how you navigate regulatory challenges on your journey.
Navigate regulatory challenges?
That's a good one. Yeah. Luckily, coming from Canada, we have pretty strict regulatory thresholds and rules already. And so when we are mining in a country in South America, whether it's Chile or Argentina, we already exceed their expectations usually, and we bring our own engineering standards with us. How you marry that with the local geopolitical expectations it's not hard, but it just takes some creativity and some navigating. But working with the local communities, working with the local government, that's a very, very important part of making sure that regulatory hurdles never get in your way.
Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, deep sea mining is actually heavily regulated, and you have multiple jurisdictions, and the rules are close to being finalized, but not completely final. And so that presents some other challenges of convincing investors that they will get done. But just at the international domain, when you're doing deep sea mining in international waters, you need to spend about $70 million over 5 years doing environmental baseline and impact assessment. It's a significant investment, and only with that data can you then submit and say, I want to actually start mining.
I'll scan for one more question, but I'll pick up on the regulation policy piece, because certainly I was surprised to learn 50 years. I think you said the Seabed Association has been working on that regulation. I hear Valley of Death. I hear, 20 years to make a mine. Are we, if you think about supply and demand, our ability to meet supply or meet demand with supply, are you optimistic or pessimistic, and why? And maybe Oliver, why don't you start?
I'm optimistic. I think a lot of the world has ignored seabed minerals. I think although work has been going on for 50 years, it's really in the last 20 that it's accelerated, and we're very, very close. I actually think a large portion of nickel and cobalt will come from the seabed in the next decade. And I think the economics will be such that it will be difficult for terrestrial-based mines to open. They just won't be able to compete economically and environmentally.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, it's land-based mining is what's always been done, so it's easier for them to get permits, which is frustrating because when you have a new technology that's better, it takes longer to get it approved, and you do have to do the same environmental baseline studies with landmines too. But I totally agree that I'm super optimistic. I think that the kind of lull in EV sales right now will pick up again once we allow EV prices to drop even more, and then the demand for the metals and minerals like we're producing will accelerate again. But we're in a real valley right now because the price of lithium is almost as low as they've seen it. Well, 6 years ago it was even lower, but it's quite low right now, and it's just, it puts a slowdown on the whole industry. And so everything you do just takes twice as long as you thought it would. But yeah, staying alive through that is challenging. It's what the Valley of Death is all about.
Excellent, yeah. I'll scan one more time. I'll just pick up from that last comment. We have one right in the back. Yep, thank you.
I have two questions. One on the lithium side. Have you had the chance to pilot your product out in the field, and what was the key technical hurdle? And then on the seabed mining, how come those pebbles aren't covered over in sediment? Just a curiosity.
Did you hear?
So I didn't hear the last
Can you repeat
bit.
the second question for Oliver? I don't think we could hear it.
Yeah, sorry. How come the pebbles at the bottom of the ocean aren't covered in sediment?
Nobody knows. It's a really, really good question, and the scientists are trying to understand that. But we know how they form. They take millions of years to form. The metals solidify around a kernel, but we don't know why they don't get covered. There's also some evidence that they flip every 500,000 years or so, and we're not quite sure how that happens either.
Sounds magnetic. Interesting.
Amanda?
Yes, we've piloted. In 2022, we piloted our technology with 2 major mining companies for almost a year, 5 months operating in the field. Took a year to get everything mobed and demobbed, though. And we're currently in the field in Chile with a larger version of our pilot. So we call this a demo, and it is the last step before we're commercial scale. So luckily, our technology scales as a module, so it's modular. So once we prove it at one size, it's like Lego. You just spit them out and build continuously from there.
Perfect. Okay, well, we are running out of time here, so please let's thank our presenters. Certainly, the critical mineral space, like I said at the beginning, it's key, it's super important, but a host of trade-offs that hopefully technology and some innovative thinking can help overcome. So let's thank our speakers.
Thank you. Well done. Good to meet you. Yeah, good luck.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.